Oh boy, we got a big card coming up today. UFC from Fight Island number 6. I mean, hey, that main event speaks for itself. You got the Korean Zombie taking on a really tough out, and Brian Ortega. We haven't seen him for a while, and I'm excited with it because this show is brought to you by Ringside Beer. Make sure you check them out, ringsidebeerstore.com. I don't have good eyes. I've got glasses today, but you can see, and I can see plain as day. Use the promo code FNP. You're going to save 25% off your order. Forget about the glasses. I've got some great tap handles here. Ringside Beer Store, the boxing glove tap handle. I've got the MMA glove tap handle. They make some awesome merch as well. You check them out. You're helping out the store. Promo code FNP, 25% off your order today. Ringsidebeerstore.com. Let's keep going with the Fight Night Picks is brought to you by Vertiball. Head on over to their website. It's vertiball.com. And listen, it's an awesome product. It's a local company out of New Brunswick, Canada. So make sure you support those guys locally as well as Fight Night Picks. But they're the only mountable portable muscle massager. They can stick on any smooth surface. They've got an industrial strength suction cup. Can support over 100 pounds of pressure. You can get really into those deep knots. I have one here at home. I use it for my back and my shoulders from holding up that Fight Night Picks Pick'em trophy. But listen, make sure you check them out. It's a great product. Like I said, they're recommended by physiotherapists, masseuses, and chiropractors across Canada, the US, UK, and Australia. And they're used by countless professional athletes like Minka Fitzpatrick on screen there, as well as Clelin Ferrell of the Raiders. So if you head into the cart, make sure you check them out. So I've got a Vertiball massager in my cart right there. Use the promo code FNP. You're going to save 10% off your order. You're supporting this company here that I'm very passionate about in New Brunswick, Canada, and you're helping out us as well. So make sure you check them out, vertiball.com, promo code FNP, 10% off your order. And without further ado, let's get into it.
Ladies and gentlemen, recorded in Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada. It's time for the Fight Night Picks podcast with your host, Craig.
And Matt.
Alan.
Oh boy, and Matt, we are back. We're live this Saturday for a great card coming up over there. You can see Brian Ortega taking on the Korean Zombie. My glasses are glaring, so I'm going to take them off. Now I can't see, but we're going to go a little freehand here today, Matt. So as always, at Craig Allen FNP, at Matt Allen FNP. I have yet to add Matt's handle to the bottom, but I should. We got Nige hanging out in the chat, as always, every weekend. And I saw the question up there earlier in the super chat.
The Dingus
from
is here.
For Snooch. Where's the Dingus? The Dingus is here. We're both here. Make sure you check us out, Fight Night Picks, at Fight Night Picks on Instagram. That's where you're going to find the votes that we're going to go through during the show. You can cast your vote. And similar to Tapology, forget about those dinks over there that don't know MMA, but they do. But just check us out on Instagram. You can also find us at Fight Night Picks now on that thing they call TikTok. We're going to give it a try. We're going to see what happens. There's not a lot of MMA stuff on TikTok. I will say that right now. And if this is your first time tuning in for Fight Night Picks Kicks, A, we appreciate yous. And B, and I hate to ask for it, but toss us the like and the sub. It really does help us out. So if you can do that, that's awesome. OJ's hanging out in the chat. Nige, Hanato, we got SAPT, and Akash Deep. You're here every week. How are you guys doing, Branch Above? We're doing quite well. I'm going to open up the Instagrams. But first, again, if this is your first time watching Fight Night Picks Kicks, we like to have a lot of fun on the show. We're going to rip through all of our picks. Maybe some of them change after the weigh-ins. I've seen people over in the comments section kind of saying Jamie Mullerkey. I mean, I know he's got the nice tossed salad in the back, but he looked a little sussy at weigh-ins. Looked like he was going to weigh in over.
He did.
Took the trunks down. The boys held the towel, and we are where we're at today. Fights didn't fall out due to weigh-ins, but I will say, man, it sucks when you have a look over on Tapology, the fights that were booked for this card. I mean, my guy, Magomed Mustafayev, was supposed to be here. My guy, Muslim Salikov, was supposed to be here, so it's a shame that all of that fell through. But like I said, we're going to rip through the Tapology picks. We're also going to give you our pick for Fight of the Night, Matt, so let's go over there and have a look at it. And from right here, early on, Matt, this one right here is your Fight of the Night pick. Mine's a little bit differently. I think there's a lot of good ones, but in this one, Thomas Almeida, Jonathan Martinez, give us a lowdown as to why it's your Fight of the Night.
So, Thomas Almeida, for anyone who's kind of a new MMA fan, Thomas Almeida was an absolute buzzsaw for a couple of years at the bantamweight division, and a lot of people did think that he was going to be kind of that next guy to challenge Dominic Cruz. And really, before he fought Cody Garbrandt, he was the original Garbrandt. Like, he was that young guy who was moving up, knocking a lot of guys out in a division that didn't have a lot of stoppages at the time. And then we kind of figured out, okay, there is a limitation to Thomas Almeida's style. Like, you are going to eat a lot of damage as you fight, and it started to really show by the end of his first run in the UFC. Not that he ever got cut or anything, but he has taken such a long time off that we can kind of look at this as two different careers. Now, him moving up to 145, I think it'll be really interesting, because the one thing that a lot of guys who might have, suspect chins can really benefit from is moving up in weight. And I do think Thomas Almeida is going to benefit from that. And same thing with Jonathan Martinez. In his last fight, yeah, he looked great against Frankie Saenz, but he did miss weight. So both guys moving up to 145, I think it will be the optimal weight class for both of them. And I think this fight's going to produce absolute fireworks. Jonathan Martinez's first 2 professional wins were by flying knee knockout. He has 3 knee knockouts in total. Always love a good knee and an elbow knockout personally. So yeah, I think this fight's going to be absolute fireworks.
I'm really looking forward to it. We'll preview it in depth as we move along. The one for me, it has to be Matteos Gamra taking on Guram Kutateladze. And Matt, I mean, we've seen it week in, week out, fight in, fight out. Matteos Gamra, I mean, through 18 pro fights, the 1-0 contest obviously being one of the Norman Park fights. He fought him 3 times. In his last time out against Park, I had a look back today to watch the fight one more time. It's an awesome fight. It's free on YouTube, on the KSW YouTube page. He beats the absolute piss out of Norman Park from southpaw and from orthodox stance. You'd have no idea when he's standing orthodox that he's a southpaw. He's so clean with his hands. He's so technical and lands those nice straight shots. Absolutely bloodied up Park. The doctor had to step in and end the fight. It was amazing, but Matteos Gamra, I mean, he's ADCC credentialed. He has great jiu-jitsu, slick wrestling as well, but his striking's on point. I think it's going to be a great fight for Guram Kutateladze. We've seen this guy. I mean, this guy can really hammer things home. Hits incredibly hard. Is a main training partner with the one and only Khamzat Chimaev at All Stars. He definitely brings something interesting to the cage. I see a lot of people going with Guram Kutateladze in the comments. It hasn't been the same with the predictions, so I will throw that one out there. The odds have Matteos Gamra, but I think there's huge upside with Guram Kutateladze. It's a great fight to have. It's kind of interesting, especially for a UFC debut. Here, you get Matteos Gamra, the KSW former featherweight and lightweight champ. But this fight itself should be a fight of the night. I'm really looking forward to it. So, I said, we've got a great card coming up. We're going to whip all the way through the comments. We're going to whip through this entire card. I really appreciate GamerBod for hitting up the super chat. Let's get into it. It's a great card overall. This is one of those ones where, and I saw it in the comments, you guys like to focus on the lesser fights. To me, they're not lesser fights, man. No. Like, Guram Kutateladze and a tough out Matteos Gamra, that's an awesome fight. That's a UFC level fight. And does the UFC always have the best competition? Not necessarily. There's always world-class talent in these other organizations. And when they get the opportunity to come to the UFC, we got to give those guys and gals some shine. And there's a lot of debuting fighters coming up this week. Not so much this week, but next week. And we're getting ready for our UFC 254 picks as well. We're going to be doing those after this. So some crazy MMA action. We got about 50 minutes for this stream. So, Matt, let's start off with the first fight. We got Said Nurmagomedov. We have Mark Striegel. What are you thinking on this one?
So it's not often you have someone being better at Sambo than a Russian-born fighter, but Mark Striegel is. He's a national Filipino champion for Sambo and a phenomenal grappler. And with Said Nurmagomedov, kind of a weirder version of the Russian stereotypical fighter that you will have, because he is more in line with a Zabit type style than he is with a Khabib. The weird thing is, he can get controlled on the ground, whereas Zabit, he's got such great footwork and he's kind of jumping around and moving so well that it's almost impossible to really get your arms around him and take him down. With Nurmagomedov, you can do that if you're really dedicated to the game plan. So if Mark Striegel does go out there and just decide, okay, I'm going to try to clinch and really work the takedown, I think he could have success, but I do think Nurmagomedov, the footwork, the volume, the really nice striking too, I think it will be too much for Striegel. And it's unfortunate because, and we see this a lot, it's a hard first fight in the UFC. And it should be an interesting one though.
And I see a lot of people taking Striegel in the comments. I've seen it during the week in the comments section. A lot of people going Striegel. The trouble is there's a lot of, inconsistencies. I mean, Mark Striegel's supposed to be coming in on short notice to take on Timur Valiev earlier on this summer. I mean, he's got a great record, 18-2 with the 1-0 contest. And I mean, we've seen it from going back, watching his fights. He's a very impressive fighter with a lot of unorthodox trip takedowns. Something I like is you get a guy, they clinch right in the center of the cage, and then he pushes himself forward like you're pushing somebody into a pool.
Very Cejudo-esque.
Very Cejudo-esque, for sure. Mark Striegel does a lot of really good things that I do like. The trouble is, he hasn't fought a lot lately. The most amount of fights he had in a year was in 2012. He had 6, but since then it's been a drop-off. He was going up into 2012, and then it was a drop-off after that. Hasn't fought in about a year and a half. I'm going to go with Said Nurmagomedov, the guy that I've seen more recently, the guy that I've seen more tape of in the UFC against that type of competition. Again, not to say that Mark Striegel hasn't fought good names. We talked about it in the original prediction video. A loss to Reese McLaren with 1 championship. Hey, that's all right. You got a submission win over Kai Kara France. That's pretty cool. And then his last fight, the no contest, was against UFC level competition. So it should be a really good fight. But overall, I have Said Nurmagomedov, and I mean, he's a huge favorite. He's too much of a favorite for me at this point. It's a pass for me. Opened as a minus 365 favorite. He's now a minus 415 over in best fight odds. For Striegel, opened as a plus 300, now at a plus 319. If we have a look over on the Instagrams with Fight Night Picks, Matt, 158 total votes for Nurmagomedov, 40 to Striegel. That's good for an 80-20 split, roughly. As we move along, I see people going with Said Nurmagomedov. Dory's got Said. We've got Ojace with Said Nurmagomedov. And then we continue on with the main event, which we'll get to. I mean, it's a great main event. Ortega, Korean Zombie. We'll get there as we continue on, unless somebody hits us up with a fat super chat, and then we'll take some time. So, hit the super chat. Toss up the likes. Now, the next fight. We're looking at Gadjimrad Antigulov taking on Max Grecian. Matt, this is an interesting fight because you can see the difference in heights and reaches on the screen, but holy smokes, at weigh-in day, Max Grecian looks way bigger than old Gadjimrad Antigulov. Antigulov looks like a Russian Daniel Cormier. Real filled out.
He really is. Got that barrel chest on him. And Antigulov, unfortunately, did train cardio with Data 5000, so it's always something that worries me in his fights, because when you do see that first kind of rush of grappling, and with Antigulov, it isn't going to be, he's not going to go out there like Francis and just throw crazy punches till you fall down and then get tired. He's going to go for the takedown, try to trip, really chain his wrestling together, and that's going to be tough to do against a guy like Grecian. And Antigulov, it'd be one thing if that style could really hold up over 15 minutes or 3 really hard rounds. But with Antigulov, again, I keep on going back to that Cutelaba fight. If your whole game plan is, I'm going to make Cutelaba tired, and then you get tired trying to do that and then get finished yourself, I just don't really see where, the game plan comes in. I don't see what he does better than Grecian after that first, 4-minute stretch.
And we've seen Max Grecian in there against some really good wrestlers in the past. I mean, the Jordan Johnson fights with PFL, he took on top-level competition on the way up. The one loss that we really look at, Magomed Ankalaev, I mean, hey, that's got to be water off a duck's back at a certain point. And for Gadjimrad Antigulov, going from rank to a losing streak where we really haven't seen the best of Gadjimrad Antigulov in some time. Now, if we have a look over on Fight Night Picks, at Fight Night Picks over on Instagram, $10 from Robert in the super chat. We really do appreciate you, Robert, for supporting the channel. 153 total votes for Max Grecian, 44 for Gadjimrad Antigulov. And if we head over into the odds over on Best Fight Odds, it's another situation like Nurmagomedov and Striegel where Max Grecian opened as a minus 200 favorite. That line dropped to minus 300. He's now a minus 357. Too big of a favorite for me. Trent Bossingham. Haven't seen you in a little bit, Trent. Hitting up the super chat. You've got Ortega, Robertson, Silva, Martinez, Grecian, and Gamra lineup for DK. Just wanted to ask before I head to work. Thanks, Matt and Craig. I mean, I'll give you a little bit of a sneak preview. I don't have Martinez, as crazy as that might sound. That should be an awesome fight. I don't have Martinez. I don't have Ortega. I don't have Silva either, but it's a good card. I mean, if you're on DK and you're going for points, they could work out for you. I just see the Korean Zombie getting more points. More points.
Yeah, again, I don't really use a lot of DraftKings. Prediction-wise, I might switch up a few of them, but I mean, yeah, if that gets you the most points, go for it.
Sean McMinn, thanks.
You.
We appreciate you in the super chat as well. So for this fight, nice. I mean, again, you've got a really tough out in Max Grecian, who his first fight up a weight class on short notice against Marcin Tybura. It's hard to look good against Marcin Tybura. Just ask Ben Rothwell. It didn't work out for him. So we've got Grecian in that one. Nothing changing. This fight, I want to know your picks in the comments section. Jamie Mullerkey, Fares Ziam. We've seen a lot of people going with the French fighter in this one. Nous sommes tous ensemble. And do we all vote for Alain Baudot last weekend? I don't know. But we've got a really exciting French fighter in Fares Ziam. And I mean, in the lower weight classes, there's a lot to really like. I mean, we talked about a name in the last week or so in Morgan Sherrier that trains with Fares Ziam. He's a really hot prospect. And Saladin Palnas, another one that it's just time. When's he coming to the UFC? KSW champ there. So Fares Ziam, you know how good of a striker he can be. His defense and his takedown defense is half decent. It really is. But we haven't really seen everything come together. I mean, 0-1 in the UFC. Really impressive coming up a really good young talent. And for Jamie Mullerkey, Matt, how did his first fight go? I know he lost, but how did that fight go?
There's no shame losing to Brad Riddell in your first fight in a fight of the night. And that's how Jamie Mullerkey's career started in the UFC, which is just kind of crazy. And the good thing about that fight, too, was, Mullerkey's this really good grappler, but he decided primarily to strike with one of the better Muay Thai strikers in the division, I'd argue. Or at least one of the better guys outside of the top 15 striking-wise. And now, did he get beat up? Yes, he did, and especially by the end of the last round. But he just showed that he's tougher than a $2 steak, to quote Jim Ross. And he's always going to be there for the fight. He's got good cardio. He's got good wrestling. And if he is able to get the fight to the ground, again, we only saw some of his striking in that fight. And he did rock Brad Riddell. He had him hurt in points in that fight. So it's not like his striking was completely outclassed. And then on the ground, you know how good he is. So I am picking Mullerkey, but I think this will be an entertaining fight. And it's a good test for both guys. Lucas,
appreciate you in the super chat. Thank you. Now I see a lot of people going with Fares Ziem. Avila's got Fares. PL Game Time. Ziem's takedowns are beautiful. Dory's got Mullerkey. Branch Above has Mullerkey. Joe went with Ziem. Who else? Green King Ziem, maybe, LOL. A lot of people going with Ziem. Dory going Mullerkey by sub. Mullerkey is a pasty dude who forgot sunscreen and got sunburnt. Yeah, maybe. He did. I mean, look at the picture of Casey Kenny coming up for picks this week. Kid sunburned. But in this fight, that's the thing. I mean, the weigh-in's scaring a lot of people on Jamie Mullerkey, and I agree. So based on that weigh-in, to me, this fight, it's a pass for me. There's going to be a lot of pass on this card. There's a method to my madness, but to me, this one's a bit of a pass. I think it should be a great fight, and I see a lot of people, again, not really sure about Jamie Mullerkey in this one, just due to the weigh-in. Now, he weighed in the pound over, but again, you're in range. As far as the odds, Mullerkey opened a plus 200 underdog. He went down as a favorite fairly quickly. He's now minus 132 over on best fight odds. For Francis Ziem, opened as minus 235. He's now a plus 109. So the odds are almost at par. Again, I see we got about a 50-50 here now, but it seems like there might be a little bit more riding with Fares Ziem. It's a tough fight. I'm going with Jamie Mullerkey. I'm not going to change the pick. Again, I don't like that weigh-in, but I am going to stick to my guns here, so to speak, and go with the guy that I originally had. Based on the fight tape that we watched at the start of the week, I really like the pressure of Mullerkey. I like the combinations of Mullerkey. I like one of his training partners that we saw out and not win, but just go to a draw recently in Josh Culibao. But I really do think that Mullerkey has a good shot in this fight. Would I be surprised if I woke up the next morning and Fares Ziem wins? No, 100% I wouldn't, but it should be a good fight nonetheless.
I agree, too. I think we saw what Jamie Mullerkey does worst in his first fight, and he still did a very good job at it. So I do think if Mullerkey is able to really chain his takedowns together with his striking, he should be able to get this one done.
And Fares Ziem, not an easy guy to take down. I mean, Don Madge had some issues. He did get him down, but it wasn't for long. Now, if we have a look over at the picks on the Instagrams at Fight Night Picks, 117 total votes for Jamie Mullerkey to 72 for Fares Ziem. Should be a good fight. I'm really looking forward to it. Now let's move on. We got Jin Young Park taking on John Phillips. Now, John Phillips, the Welsh wrecking machine, the white Mike Tyson. When this guy hits, he hits hard, but he has to hit. And he throws long shots. And by long, I don't want to say labored, but they're long. They're long. And we talk about a lot of fighters where, you know, you're that technical fighter, you're throwing straight shots down the middle, like Matteos Gamra. You see it a lot more in the lower weight classes, but you can in the upper weight classes. And then you've got the guys that just would have gone toe-to-toe with your classic fighters of yesteryear. And John Phillips is one of those guys. You see it out of him. I mean, his fight against Jack Marshman could have been good, but it wasn't. It wasn't very good. And you got Jin Young Park that's on a little bit of a run here, and he's taken on some decent names so far in a young career. I mean, 11-4 to this point. And he's got the loss to Anthony Hernandez, Fluffy, but that's going to happen. Beat Power Bar Marc-Andre Barrio. And, I mean, he's put it together. He's had a lot of finish wins as well. He's going to be at a height and reach disadvantage. The Tapology picks, just having a quick look at those, at a 2,640, 84% going with Jin Young Park. Large majority picking him to win by decision. And he's a big favorite in this one. Open at minus 220, he's now minus 292 over on best fight odds. I'm going to stack the deck against him one more time, and I say against him, against John Phillips. Over on Fight Night Picks on Instagram, 165 total votes for Park, 31 for John Phillips. That's good for an 84% clip for Jin Young Park. Matt, convince me that John Phillips is going to win this fight.
Yeah, Park's probably going to win. Let's be honest. John Phillips, he has this weird style where his volume's not really high, but I don't really have him as like a top-tier power puncher in the division. It's sort of OSP-esque, but the difference is when OSP lands and cracks you, he can put you down. With John Phillips, it feels like he's really waiting for his opponent a lot, and then it's almost kind of in his own head that, yes, I've got this really good power, so just wait, look for that perfect shot. But in his hesitation, he's able to get taken down, or if guys do have a higher volume than him, he can kind of get overwhelmed by the fight as it goes on. So for John Phillips, his best chance to win is, and again, it's not that his cardio's, Antigulov bad, but he does really only have that 3-minute window where it's okay, I can land this big bomb. And then afterwards, we really haven't seen enough of, his wrestling, his bottom game to get back up to his feet. There's just different X factors of his game that he doesn't really have, or that he hasn't at least been able to show in the UFC. And I really don't think this is going to be the fight that he decides, okay, I'm going to really pull out this really great wrestling game that I have that no one's seen yet.
Now, we saw him go on a losing streak from the start of his UFC tenure to the Amedovski fight, where he came out, back against the wall, and he tosses out a crazy first, sub-minute knockout. And it was awesome. And then his back's up against the wall against Khamzat Chimaev. And hey, we know what Chimaev's like. Now, Jin Young Park isn't on that Chimaev level. We're not saying Jin Young Park should fight like Leon Edwards tomorrow and then back-to-back he should fight Israel Adesanya. But I think Park's got more than enough to get the win in this one. I'm not changing my pick. Now, in a fight that is incredibly interesting, will I change my pick? We have Canada's Jillian Robertson taking on Pauliano Battaglio. And this is a really interesting fight because it's a clash of styles. Jillian Robertson, very much a grappler. I know the question was out there in my DMs on Twitter. Jillian Robertson, if you look her up on Tapology, her last fight was a loss to Amanda Lowen in grappling. Amanda Lowen is an insane grappler. Yeah. So for Jillian Robertson, again, we talk about it, iron sharpening iron. Now, I was wrong about a grappler that took on a really good grappler, Stephanie Egger, who took on a really tough out in Gabby Garcia, and just kind of took that and said, yeah, well, based off what I've seen, Egger all day. So Jillian Robertson, we've seen her in the UFC for quite some time. You got a good body for it to look at. She's still incredibly young for this flyweight division. Yeah. The sky's really the limit in that division, but I do see it over in the comments. Again, Nicholas Thompson, Battaglio, let's see, Green King's got Jillian, Booch for Snooch got Pauliana. To me, Pauliana Battaglio, we've seen it where she's really heavy on her lead leg. I worry about that against somebody like Jillian Robertson. If she goes in to shoot a single and wrestles her down, like you say, there's definitely a good shot for Jillian Robertson to get the win. But if you look over on that right-hand side, Pauliano Battaglio, what a good striker. We've seen her out of a good gym. Andre Pederneiras, I know he wasn't there for Vieira in her last time out, but again, main training partner is Katlyn Vieira, and we saw in her last fight what she can do. Does that weigh anything on Pauliano Battaglio? No, but she's her own fighter. I think this is a really good fight. What are you thinking on this one?
So I think Jillian Robertson has beat as good of fighters as Battaglio, but I think she's lost to the same kind of region as well. Because Jillian Robertson, like you had said, so young in her career, you don't really know what you're going to get every time. Yes, she is a really good grappler. She's black belt under Dean Thomas in jiu-jitsu, and that means something. And you know that really, for as long as the fight is on the ground, she's able to get it there, Battaglio's going to be in a lot of danger. The issue is, it is such a contrast of styles because Pauliana can just kind of piece her up from the outside, throw those side kicks, really use her kicking game, use her range and her volume. I think Robertson's going to be in a lot of trouble. And the Robertson fight that I keep on going back to is there's sometimes losses in people's career that just stand out to me. And that Macy Barber loss was a really bad one for her because Macy Barber was just able to go in there and just kind of wreck house. She walked forward like she was Paulo Costa, threw those big hooks to the body, big hooks to the head, and everything landed. And Robertson just didn't really seem to know what to do with the pressure. And a great fighter who, you have to pressure. I always feel like Dominic Cruz is a good example because Dominic Cruz has such great foot movement, but if you can really pressure him like sort of a Cody Garbrandt or at least draw him out, then you can beat him. Jillian Robertson, when you pressure her, she just kind of freezes. It's sort of that deer in headlights type problem. So if Pauliana is really able to get her combinations going in upper volume, I think it could be a long night for Robertson. But it's the exact opposite on the ground. I think if Robertson is able to go out there, really clinch and wear on Battaglio as the fight goes on and get it to the ground, I can see a submission opening up for her. I think the Courtney Casey win was a really big one for her because Courtney Casey, she has a good ground game. I'm not going to say she's spectacular on the ground by any means, but she does have a very similar striking game to Pauliana. So I do think if you're able to submit and get someone like Courtney Casey down to the ground to submit them, I think you can submit Pauliana Battaglio as well.
Yeah, and I mean, it's such a good fight. And again, when we're talking clash of styles, this is one of those ones where both fighters are kind of at a similar point in their careers. We've seen Jillian Robertson lose to some all-right competition. You have a look, I mean, at Pauliano Battaglio's record. It's a shame. We haven't seen her all that much. She's one of those fighters that, especially in this flyweight division where 2-3 wins, you're right up near the top. I mean, look at Cynthia Calvillo. Now, is that going to happen every day? You get to fight somebody like Jessica Ai. But for Battaglio, again, former common opponent, Cynthia Calvillo, or just having her as an opponent. You look at the wins. I mean, Pearl Gonzalez, we're talking 3 years ago. Ciryl Kondo, the Calvillo loss by submission. That's a little troubling going into this one. And then Lauren Mueller, who I get mixed up with a really tough out in Lauren Murphy, who's fighting next week. All to say, Pauliano Battaglio, I really like the striking. If we have a look at Fight Night Picks over on Instagram, you got 117 total votes for Jillian Robertson. You have 75 for Battaglio. If we have a look over at the odds, Matt, I mean, Jillian Robertson, more than a 2-1 favorite in this. Kind of surprising to me, and that line has actually gone, it was way down. At one point, she was minus 264. Now she's minus 214. So the money's coming in on Pauliana. I mean, she opened a plus 200, now at a plus 176. I still like the underdog in this one. So I'm keeping my pick with Pauliano Battaglio. Are you still thinking? Are you changing your pick? What do you think?
No, I'm staying with Jillian Robertson. I do think the ground game is going to be a little overwhelming for Battaglio, and especially what we saw in the Courtney Casey fight. Now, the Ciryl Kondo win was a really nice win for her, but other than that, that's really been her only really marquee win that stands out in your head. Whereas Jillian Robertson, the win over Molly McCann, where she choked her completely unconscious in her UFC debut, I thought that was really impressive. And again, not that Molly McCann's one of these ranked killers, but it's a good win over someone who you know is going to offer you just a lot of different question marks in the fight. 'Cause she's good at everything. So for Robertson to go out there and get that win, I hold that in high regard. I think she can be able to get it done again.
Akash Deep's got Botello, and I see a lot of conversation about the boxing fight coming up tonight. I'm really looking forward to that. Teofimo Lopez taking on a really tough out Vasily Lomachenko. I'm going Teofimo.
No, you're not.
I have no tape study on that. I have very little insight. I'm just looking forward to it. Now we get into my fight of the night. Matteos Gamra making his UFC debut, taking on Guram Kutateladze, also making his UFC debut, the Georgian fighter. And he's got a great nickname. I've seen different variations, but you can see it up there on the screen, or maybe you can't. You'll see it tonight, what it is. The Georgian Viking, I want to say it is. That's pretty cool. Gamer, Georgian Viking. It should be a great fight. I mean, Matteos Gamra, really good everywhere. Guram Kutateladze, I mean, what can I say? A finisher. The trouble for me, a lot less active. I mean, going back to his fifth to last fight, it was 4 years ago. Then 2 years, 4 months ago. 2 years ago. A year, 10 months. 11 months ago, his last fight against Felipe Silva. He absolutely smashed him. So it's been a while since we've seen him. And again, a lot of people pointing to the fact he's a main training partner for Khamzat Chimaev. Next weekend, you've got a really weird fight. I have to throw this one out there. You have the main training partner of Robert Whittaker fighting on Whittaker's card, taking on Phil Hawes. And the guy's 4-0. So we're getting a little funky fresh with the fighters that we're bringing in. But Guram Kutateladze is one of those guys that definitely deserves a shot here. Taking on a tough out in Matteos Gamra. He's a really big favorite. Akash Deep's got Loma. It is what it is. But overall, this should be a great fight. Now, Booch for Snooch says Guram's striking looks powerful but basic. Here's the thing. I mean, Guram Kutateladze, and we talk about this all the time, Matt. Power strikes versus the technique. This is one of those fights that it seems like, anyway, Guram could come out and knock him out with a jab. Who knows? I don't see it happening. Look at the way that Matteos Gamra fights against a lot of power guys. Look at the way that he led Norman Park long. In that third fight, it was a bull versus a matador type of thing. And Matteos was in and out, side-to-side movement, switching stances. I mean, he was throwing a nice jab down the middle. He'd switch, and then he'd jab with his opposite hand.
Yeah.
He does so many things very well. I think Guram's a great fighter. I think that he's a little bit slighted on the odds here, though I do understand it because Matteos, I mean, undefeated, former KSW double champ. Gamrot, minus 319 over on best fight odds for Kutateladze. He's a plus 252 underdog. We can state the case for either one of these guys. I'm sticking with the pick of Matteos Gamrot. What do you think here?
I'm going with Matteos Gamrot as well. Now, not to take anything away from Kutateladze, goodness, I have a hard time saying that name, but if you go back and watch a lot of his fights, he is hittable, and he is a guy who's not afraid to eat a few shots to give a few, and against a guy like Gamrot, that's not really the game you want to be playing, and if you are open for shots, his volume and his power, because he can get, or Gamrot, he can get you with both ways. If he does just want to, really up the volume, start slow in the first round, keep on extending as the fight goes on, he can do that. If he wants to piece you up in the first round, that's going to be open for him. Guram is a very dangerous fight, though, for Gamra, for that being his first fight in the UFC. So, again, great pick for your fight of the night. I do see this being an absolute barn burner for as long as it lasts, but I also have Gamra on this one.
Should be a great one. I mean, Family Buhal, Hui, stop asking the same question. Just stop. All right, so it should be a good fight. I'm really looking forward to. Again, the lines are off. The lines are weird. Yeah. And this has been happening the last couple of weeks. We've seen lines where they dart right out of the middle. They go for a correction, or somebody goes in there and tosses a ton of money on something that they like. But like I said, it should be a really good fight. And Stitch, why is the only pick of Gamrot they have in a garbage bag shirt, LMAO? Good question. That's actually a really good question. Thanks for asking that. Sometimes at the start of the week when I go to make up the graphics, the UFC doesn't have any pictures of these people. So I have to go on their Instagrams and Photoshop something. And the best picture I could find was that picture that's stealing one from KSW. So there's your answer. Coming up this week, you're going to have to look at the picture I've got for Lauren Murphy's short notice opponent because it is terrible. Now, in this fight, Thomas Almeida, this is your fight of the night. Almeida's taking on Jonathan Martinez. I'm going to have a look at Fight Night Picks over on Instagram. 104 total votes for Thomas Almeida to 89 for Jonathan Martinez. It's close, 54% going with Almeida. If we have a look at the total line, Matt, it's still close, and it's been close all week. It's not quite a pick'em. The line slightly favors Almeida, but at one point, Martinez was a favorite during this week. Almeida opened a minus 190. At one point, it went to like a minus 110 situation. Now Almeida, minus 134. So drop down slightly. Martinez, plus 165. At the start of the week, a lot of money on Martinez. He's now a plus 111 favorite, underdog over on Best Fight Odds. Jonathan Martinez, if this fight was at 135, I had my questions. And that was why. At the start of the week, it said on just about every website, this is going to be a bantamweight. It's a featherweight, so it is what it is, and that's why you have a little bit of an asterisk next to Martinez and next to Almeida. Truly, there should be an asterisk, and I really like that comment, actually, by Jesus. I have to point that one out. It reminds me of Royval and France. That's a good point. I appreciate the super chat. Now, you're paying for our photoshopping, so thanks. That's awesome. But in this fight, Thomas Almeida, what can I say? The guy had a translator the last time, or one of the last times we saw him out in the cage, and now he speaks like perfect English. And I know he's been in Texas for quite some time training, and he's really credited the time off with helping him grow as a martial artist. We're probably going to see a wild Thomas Almeida out there. I like Almeida a lot. I liked him going into that Garbrandt fight. I liked him when I saw him live in Boston, his last time out at UFC 220. For Jonathan Martinez, this is a guy that used to fight at 25, then at 35. I had no idea what we were going to get out of him in the UFC. Like, I really didn't. Zane, appreciate you as well. But with Jonathan Martinez, I had no idea. He's looked good. Even in the one loss, he looked good. It was such a close fight. I mean, there's arguments that definitely can be made that he won that fight and he should be undefeated in the UFC. But his last time out, he looked great. He really did. And I mean, his knees up the middle are great. The Frankie Saenz fight, though, I will point to it, the fact that he missed weight. And it was a big miss. In this one, both guys in the weight limit. Do you think that it favors Almeida here or what?
So I think it favors both guys, and I do think we are going to see the best version of both guys in this fight. Now, yes, ring rust is a real thing, and I'm sure Thomas Almeida is going to be feeling it, but it's hard for me to believe that 10 extra pounds isn't going to help Thomas Almeida's chin. I think those 10 extra pounds, Kamaworthy's a guy who we talk about a bit, and when you look at his record, you're like, wow, he's been stopped quite a few times. But then you actually look back at his record, and it's like, okay, he gets stopped by Paul Felder, and then at featherweight he gets stopped, and then he moved up in weight, and he's got a pretty good chin all of a sudden. Thomas Almeida, it's hard to say that that's going to happen until we see it, but Thomas Almeida, if he does come out having that crazy striking style where he's throwing all these 360 elbows, and he's throwing a lot of head kicks and whatnot, I'd be really excited to see that guy with a really good chin. Because if you can have that level of violence and that really good Muay Thai, the high stance, the light kicks, all that jazz, then it's going to be a recipe for success. I do like Jonathan Martinez as an opponent as well, because we talk about this a lot in MMA, that this person needs to step back in competition. And that's not a slight on Jonathan Martinez, but it's hard to be fighting the Cody Garbrandts, the Rob Fonts of the world, and the Jimmy Rivera's, and to not have kind of a salty record at a certain point. If you do have those key losses, I think it is always nice to kind of go back, fight a guy outside of the rankings who is on his way up. And then, if Jonathan Martinez goes out and completely steamrolls Thomas Almeida, then it's okay, great. He beat a guy who used to have a ton of hype, a really exciting fighter. now we can go forward in his career. He's got to gain a little bit of that hype that Thomas Almeida used to have. Whereas Almeida, if he can come out and have a highlight reel knockout, I mean, it doesn't put him back to where he was because he is in a new division, but it can put him in a really exciting place at featherweight.
I got to go into the chat really quick. Been on fire since I started tracking my UFC bets. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you, Trent LeBlanc. Or maybe you're in the States and your last name is LeBlanc. I've seen that in the past. Like Matt LeBlanc from France. But the comment that I have to focus on, KCOH MMA. Martinez overrated, guy lost to Sukumtov. That was on super short notice. And at the time, he had been fighting a lot at flyweight. And he was moving up to bantamweight. And I hate to say it, I was there live. Fight Night Picks, UFC Moncton. If you're coming to Moncton, you got to go back and watch that video. It's fun. But I'm not trying to pick on you. The only thing I will say is interviewing that guy, I've never seen somebody more shy. Like, you know Beyonce from the, what was that movie? Kicking and Screaming? Where he's like, I am a kind person. That's like Jonathan Martinez. He's so nervous and so like, but when he goes out to fight, he puts on awesome performances. So that one that was on short notice against Sukumtov, forget about it. His last loss, forget about it. He should have won it. He's looked really good. I think it should be a good fight. If we look over at the odds, they're close. Like I said, the line's kind of shifted here and there. So let's have a look at Fight Night Picks over on the Instagrams because, let's see, good TV. 104 total votes for Thomas Almeida to 92 for Martinez. That's a 53% clip for Almeida. So my final question, Matt, to get into there, are you switching your pick? Because I'm still going with Thomas Almeida. This guy's taking the time off. I think it definitely helps him out. I think moving up to 45 helps him. And this is a guy that I'm going to compare to a fighter that fights differently from the same country. Took some time off, moved up a weight class, looked amazing. And I will liken this fight to Renato Moicano. I think when Renato moved up to 55 and he had his first fight against Damir Hadzovic, you're like, hey, this guy was fighting the tops of the tops. And now he puts on a great fight against Hadzovic, and it's like the fire's lit right there. So I like Almeida in this one. Are you still with Martinez?
No. So now knowing that this fight is at 145, I do think the extra weight is really going to help Almeida's chin. I do think his striking is still at that like 9 out of 10 level. I think his Muay Thai is absolutely absurd. And when you do go back and look at a lot of his career, I do think a lack of experience against high-level competition is really the thing that hurt him once he got into the UFC. Because you have to imagine, if you're like 16-0 just running through everybody and you've never had a competitive fight in your life, and now you're fighting the Brad Pickett's of the world, and yes, you're winning those fights, but they're giving you damage and they're putting you down, like, it's going to take a toll on you. So I do think this time back from the sport, if Almeida can just work on his defense, work on his individual skills, come back with a little bit better of a chin, and just kind of a new kind of excitement for MMA, I do think Thomas Almeida, maybe going on a run is a bit of an exaggeration, but I think Almeida is going to be in the UFC for a while. I think he's going to continue to put on very exciting fights, and I'm going to pick him to win. I'm switching my pick.
Joe Moriarty into the chat. I don't care who wins. I just want a stoppage. I'll tell you what. This fight, let's have some fun. This fight and this fight, or, hey, you know what? Because it's my show, I can do stuff like this. This fight and this fight, they're my fight of the nights. This is one of those ones where you just grab a Guru energy drink, not a sponsor, grab a bag of popcorn, and just enjoy it. Have some fun. I'm really looking forward to this one. I think it should be a lot of fun. Those two fights are great. This fight, I just can't wrap my brain around it, Matt. I can't, and there's a reason why. Claudio Silva's my guy. I'm ride or die with Claudio Silva. Claudio Silva and Leonardo Santos. It's one of those things where you cover the sport. You know, we used to do interviews. You try and get as professional as you can without bias. And if there is bias, we say there is. And I appreciate Luis Rodriguez hanging out in New York City, the Big Apple. Remember when Randy Johnson went to the Big Apple? He was always the big unit, and then he went to the Yankees, and he was the Big Apple. That's a terrible nickname. But looking at this fight, Claudio Silva was always my guy, and it's tough to pick against Claudio Silva. Now, on a normal week, if this fight was booked, you know, in August, and they said in October you're going to get James Krause, Claudio Silva, who do you think's going to win? I would have said James Krause, full camp, easy peasy, lemon squeezy. It's tough for me to pick Krause here. I know I did earlier on in the week, and I know we can make, you know, some arguments for and against it. It's a tough fight to pick here.
Claudio Silva wins fights he has no business like winning. And you look back at his record, Leon Edwards, you don't think Claudio Silva is probably going to win over him. Of course he does. The Nordine Taleb fight was interesting too because Claudio Silva had taken this very extended period of time off between fights. And that is kind of the story between all of his fights, really. If you look, there's always a long period of time in between, or long layoffs in between all of them. Claudio Silva on the ground is an absolute monster, though. I mean, he got Nordine Taleb to the ground for the total of what felt like 5 seconds. Took his back, choked him out, and I was like, wow, Claudio Silva really about to go on a run. And then, of course, it took forever for him to get another fight scheduled. But against James Krause, who is a phenomenal grappler in his own right. And James Krause has fought guys a little bit similar to Claudio Silva. Mahesh is a little bit similar to him. There's a few other guys on his record that you can look at and be like, okay, James Krause has fought guys to prep him for this one. I think Claudio Silva on a week's notice is a tough fight, though. I do think his jiu-jitsu, no matter what, if he gets anyone on the ground whose name's not like Damian Maia, Gilbert Burns, or Gunnar Nelson, he's going to give them a lot of trouble. And James Krause, it's not that his takedown defense is bad by any means, but he is such a good grappler that I do think he is going to concede the takedown sometimes to try to get into a scramble because you think it might be beneficial to himself. But I just see Claudio Silva's jiu-jitsu being a little bit overpowering in this fight.
And there's a really good point right there, too, by time is not a line. And Krause with the sub by Sergio Moraes. He can survive Silva. It's tough, but it's a good comparison because both guys fight somewhat similarly. I hold Silva in a little bit higher regard, but Sergio Moraes, it's tough to find somebody that's that credentialed in grappling. He was just at a point where, same thing as Silva, but he was getting older and then he couldn't beat those guys. It was like, this is a bad example, but it's the same division. Damian Maia, you're fighting the top end guys, but you're also in your 40s, so you're going to start to see a bit of a decline. With Sergio Moraes, it was like steep decline, and then he's out of the UFC fighting. Who did he fight? He fought a Canadian his last time.
He's like Darren Williams, out of the league at 29.
Yeah, Fortis MMA's own Darren Williams. But still, in this fight, Claudio Silva, James Krause. Let's have a look at the odds really quickly, Matt. James Krause is the favorite slightly. He opened a minus 115. They were pick'em odds. They dropped to a minus 200. Now he's a minus 136. So the odds coming up in favor of Claudio Silva. The money coming in on Silva opened as minus 115. He's now a plus 114. Over on the Instagrams, it's a narrow margin. 53% of the total votes on Krause, 47 on Silva. I'm having a hard time with this one, Matt. I mean, we spent the entire week watching these guys fight. We saw them on the scale. Krause looked good. I saw somebody mention, I have to go back up through. I apologize that I can't find your name. Somebody didn't like Silva at the weigh-ins. Who were you? I can't see you. You're there, though. You're there, so just take it for what it's worth. Matt, are you changing your pick? Because you went with Silva and I went with Krause at the start of the week.
No, I think Silva's still got it down. I think Silva's a really underrated fighter in this division. I think he'd offer a tough fight to a lot of really good fighters. And James Krause, he's not the biggest guy at 170, and I do think the lack of physicality in his game is going to be tough defending all those takedowns from Claudio Silva. And again, you had mentioned Mahesh's jiu-jitsu's kind of on that Silva level. It's close, but I do think Silva will be able to catch Krause at some point.
Switching the pick here. I'm going with Claudio Silva, and I don't often switch my picks, but it's such a tough one. And, you hear Laura Sanko, who is a UFC, ESPN broadcaster, I guess you could say, and they had a little bit of a scrum just dedicated to her at the start of the week where she petitioned for an atomweight division, which was pretty cool. But the other thing that she did, she's always kind of trumpeting the fighters out of Glory Fitness and MMA or MMA and Fitness every single week. And it's awesome, and it's kind of weird because that's a gym that you go to, but still, Daniel Cormier reps AKA. I mean, Dominic Cruz reps Alliance, but still, Laura Sanko was kind of talking about James Krause and the fact that he doesn't really want a lot of fights because he wants to corner a lot of his fighters. He seems to be more focused into the coaching and less into the fighting, but he took this one on short notice. So I'm going with Claudio Silva based on the fact that this guy's won 14 straight. His jiu-jitsu's on point. His takedowns are half decent. He's trained extensively at London Shoot Fighters in the past, so he definitely has a good striking pedigree. And I don't care what you say about this guy, but at 170 pounds, it's pretty good if you can train with Michael Venom Page. So let's look into our next fight. We got Jimmy Crute taking on Modestas Bukauskas. We're getting close on time. Crute, takedown machine. His cardio is weird. Modestas Bukauskas, not great with the takedown defense, but his striking is certainly on point, training out of a really good gym that we just talked about. So, you got Bukauskas with the striking, but again, I worry about him getting taken down so much in his fights, and the odds definitely aren't in his favor. Jimmy Crute, one of the bigger favorites on the card at about a 3-1, open a minus 180, that line dropped. Modestas Bukauskas, I've seen a lot of people going Bukauskas this week, plus 155 is where he opened, he's now at a plus 247. FM says don't sleep on Modestas. I gotta sleep on him, buds. Who are you going with?
Oh, yeah, with the windows open and the AC on. I don't think Bukauskas is going to beat Jimmy Crute. I think he can beat fighters who are better than Jimmy Crute. I'm about to speak in a riddle. Because I do think Bukauskas' striking is at that level. And at 205, just being a talented striker can actually get you very far. It's not like lightweight where it's, okay, every guy in the top 15 could be champ any day. No, at 205, it's kind of in this weird metamorphosis, if you will, because there's guys moving up, there's guys moving down. We don't really know where the division is. A brand new champion who's lost to kind of the number one contender. Just a weird place right now. But Bukauskas, Could he go out there and knock out Shogun? Probably. Like, there's guys who everyone would know who he can definitely beat. But Jimmy Crute's just a really bad stylistic matchup for him because he can strike, but he's such a big physical guy in his wrestling, and he's going to get you up against the cage. He's going to wear you down, take you down, and look for a sub. So I know Jimmy Crute did get subbed by Misha Cirkunov himself, but again, I do think that was just another case of styles make fights where you have to get a guy to the ground, and unfortunately for him, Misha Cirkunov, one of the better jiu-jitsu guys at 205. But for Jimmy Crute, I think stylistically this is a pretty good matchup for him. I do think he'll be able to get it either by TKO ground and pound or by submission, but it's definitely going to be a grapple-heavy game plan for Jimmy Crute.
There's definitely a window of opportunity for Bukauskas. I have to say that. Edward saying, who was Bukauskas' last fight? It was against Andreas Michailidis, Greece's middleweight, who was moving up. And I say Greece, I mean the country of Greece. And he's been a middleweight for the longest time, moved up, took the fight. It was an awesome fight. Lorthos legend hanging out. Hashtag free the mat. You made this happen. You're going to be seeing a lot more of them. If we look over the votes, though, I mean, 155 total votes for Crute to 45 for Bukauskas. That's good for a 78% clip over on Fight Night Picks on Instagram. I already talked about the odds. They're overwhelmingly in Crute's favor. I'm going Crute. You're going Crute. It should be a good fight. We move into our co-main event of the evening. Now, I was looking forward to my guy, Ciryl Gane, taking on Ante Delija. Contractual issues became a problem, which is weird because he fought for KSW after PFL, and I will hide my anger for a little bit. We've got Katlyn Chookagian taking on Jessica Andrade, your former women's strawweight champ. Jessica Andrade, tiny ball of fury. Katlyn Chookagian, long, gangly, and she can hit, and all of a sudden she can wrestle. This should be a really good fight. I'm looking forward to it.
I'm as excited for this fight as I am for the main event. I'm just going to say it. I think Jessica Andrade is one of the more exciting fighters in MMA, and I think she's one of the few fighters at 125 who even have a little bit of a chance against Valentina. Now, I'm not going to Shannon Sharp hot take it and be like, I think she's going to be able to get it done, because he did really say yesterday that Conor McGregor could fight Israel Adesanya, but that's for another time. Jessica Andrade at 125, you know that physically she can deal with women bigger than her. She fought at 135. She fought the likes of Raquel Pennington, Marion Renault. Now, yes, she lost to both of those, but she did beat Raquel Pennington, and that must mean something. And at 115, just physically, she overpowered everyone.
I see a comment in there I got to bring up. Shaner766. It's hidden because you cursed, and that's why it's hidden. But you're going, the Katlyn's going to wrestle. Now, in her last fight out against Antonina Shevchenko, sure. But that's against a pure Muay Thai artist. Now, I know she trains with Valentina. Of course she does. They travel the world. They were in what? Like Brunswick, Maine for a fight against Joanna Jędrzejczyk, just training a hole-in-the-wall gym. All that to say, you can do that against pure striker. But with Jessica Andrade, it's going to be tough.
Exactly. And Katlyn Chookagian, I've been very critical of her style in the past. And in the Antonina Shevchenko fight, she changed it up a lot because she did go for all those takedowns. I don't see her out wrestling or out grappling Jessica Andrade. I think Jessica Andrade should be able to really go for the takedowns, not throw her, but really throw her. I mean, we've seen it happen in a lot of other fights. We saw it happen in Tisha Torres fight, in the Claudia Gadella fight. If Jessica Andrade gets her arms around you, she's going to slam you on your head. Again, same thing with the Rose Namajunas one, too. So, Andrade, I think, is a bad matchup for Chookagian. If Chookagian can just stay on her bike and pump that jab out for 15 minutes, she's going to win the most boring fight of the evening. But that has to be the Katlyn Chookagian game plan. It's nothing against her. If she wants to win, make it boring, throw your front kicks, get on your bike. For Andrade, you want to close that distance. I'm assuming Andrade is going to go for the takedown in this fight because just chasing Katlyn Chookagian is going to take so much energy, but I'm going to pick Andrade resoundingly in this fight.
Andrade, only a minus 160 favorite. We saw this in the last couple of weeks when you had Jermaine Durandamy fighting Juliana Pena, and I went, what? The odds are weird. Now, full disclosure, Molly McCann, Tyler Santos still haunts my nightmares, and I know that was a ridiculous fight, and close odds too, and we went with McCann. I got to go with Jessica Andrade in this fight. I mean, I had a lot of confidence when Durandamy was taking on Pena. A little nervous in that second round, but overall, I see Jessica Andrade winning this fight. And I mean, the comment section's going insane right here. I see a lot of people going with Andrade. There's some people going with Chookagian. There's definitely a method of victory for her. If we look over the Fight Night pickers over on the Instagrams, 128 total votes for Andrade, 78 for Katlyn Chookagian. That's good for 62% on Andrade. It should be a good fight. Let's look at our main event, Matt. We still have 12 minutes left before the fights start. You got Brian Ortega, T-City, shaving his head to make the weight. Matt's got the T-City.
In honor of Brian Ortega.
Just in honor. We got the Korean Zombie, Chansung Jung, and Matt, the Korean Zombie, what he's been able to do in his recent run since he's come back from the mandatory military service. I know a lot of people consider that Yair Rodriguez fight the first fight back. It was actually the Dennis Bermudez fight that was the first fight back. Smashed Mr. Dennis Bermudez. Lost that fight against Yair, but he's looked amazing since. And these guys, I mean, Brian Ortega was the first fighter to finish Frankie Edgar. How crazy is that? I know a lot of people don't consider Frankie Edgar to be one of the GOATs. The guy's a Hall of Famer. And at the time, at one point in time, I know he was lightweight champ, but he was one of the best fighters in the world. He was a pound for pound type of guy.
Oh, yeah.
Both guys finishing Frankie Edgar. Who did it better? Ortega looked pretty good when he did it. Korean Zombie looked really good. Now, are there differences there? Yes, because Frankie Edgar, when he was fighting Ortega, was fully committed to featherweight. We had a fight that was it short notice? Yeah, kind of, but it was more short notice for Ortega than it would have been for Edgar. For Korean Zombie, when he fought Edgar, well, it was because Ortega dropped out. So Edgar pops in on short notice. He was training for bantamweight. He comes in and gets absolutely whooped. So it should be a good fight. I know where Cale Graham says T-City claims he shaved his head yesterday. It was for locks of love. I saw that on his Instagram. And if it is, that's great. I mean, that's an awesome thing by him. Matt's got something for you, though.
I'm going to throw on my tinfoil hat. I do think Brian Ortega had a really bad weight cut. There was a video that came out of him talking to Aaron Bronstetter, who's, you should go follow him.
Number one Canadian.
Exactly. We don't mind having him ahead of us. But we're just talking to Aaron Bronstetter, and again, look into this for what it's worth, but one of the really clear signs of someone having a bad weight cut is if their mouth's really dry and they're having trouble speaking just because they've gotten a lot of water out of their body. And to me, it did seem like Brian Ortega was having trouble, kind of, not that he was having trouble mentally or anything, like he was cutting that much weight, but just he seemed a little sluggish, he seemed a little slow. I said this to Craig a few days before the weigh-ins happened, and then seeing that he did cut his hair, again, maybe he did do it, and he did for locks of love, so it doesn't matter why he did it. It was a good thing that he did, but it seems strange to me that a guy who seemed to be having a hard weight cut, who was mentioned before, there's an article on MMAfighting.com when he was fighting Hinato Moicano at UFC 214, that when in trying to make weight for that fight, he considered cutting his hair way back then, because that's how hard the weight cut was for him. So I think he is a big guy for 145. I do think this weight cut is getting harder and harder on him, and I do think Brian Ortega is going to be a guy like Max Holloway, who in the future, I think they'll both be fighting at 155, just because physically they're younger guys, they're getting bigger, and that's kind of the division for them. But I don't think Brian Ortega, coming off 2 years, having a new camp, and during all those injuries in the Max Holloway fight.
And then the knee injury when he's supposed to fight TKZ.
Yeah, all of that I don't think this is the best fight that you can have coming back. The Korean Zombie's a guy who has phenomenal boxing. Now, I've seen a lot of people in the chat, too, say that, no, Zombie's boxing isn't to the level of Max Holloway's. You're right. It's different. It's not the same, but it is different. Max Holloway is all that speed. It's the pressure. It's the volume. It is, to speak about kind of like Lomachenko, he's got that pressure counter punching where he's just going to be all over you, make you miss, and then really make you punish for it. With Chan Sung Jung, he's going to wait there and wait there and wait there. And he's made the metamorphosis or the evolution similar to Justin Gaethje where, okay, I have really good power and I'm just going to go in there and try to ruin everything. Now, you figure out, okay, eating damage, isn't that fun? Korean Zombie, at this stage of his career, ever since that Yair fight, he's come out, he's been a lot smarter, he sits on his shots a lot more, and he's waiting for his opponent to make mistakes. He's not just walking into danger constantly.
I think Brian Ortega definitely has an option. I mean, look at the votes over on @Fight Night Picks on Instagram. Find us there. I'm sorry I shouted. 164 total votes for the Korean Zombie, 55 for Brian Ortega. That's good for 75% roughly on Chan Sung Jung. I mean, the odds, he's more than 2-1 favorite. I've got to go TKZ. I'm not changing my pick. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. It should be a great fight. And I mean,
it's gonna be good.
Excuse me, there's a lot of fights to look forward to on this card. So, what we will do, Matt, we're going to whip through the entire card. If you came in late, we appreciate you coming in general. You're hanging out with us, and we do appreciate it. We're going to get ready for our UFC 254 picks after this. We're going to make them. And I mean, toss us the like, toss us the sub. Let's start at the bottom of the card. We have Said Nurmagomedov taking on Mark Striegel. Who are you going with in this one?
Nurmagomedov.
Matt's going Nurmagomedov. I'm also going with Nurmagomedov. Antigulov Grecian. I'm sticking with the pick of Grecian.
Grecian all day, same.
We've got Jamie Mullerkey taking on Fares Ziam. This should be a great fight. I see it being incredibly tight. I don't have a coin. Yeah, I do. I got a nickel. Heads, it's Ziam. Tails, it's on the floor. I'm going with Jamie Mullerkey, keeping the pick there.
Yeah, Mullerkey.
Okay, Matt's going Mullerkey. We both have Mullerkey. Jin Young Park, John Phillips. I've got Jin Young Park in this one.
Oh, yeah, 100%. It's hard to pick for John Phillips at this point.
Jillian Robertson taking on Pauliano Battaglio. We see it differently. I've got Battaglio.
Jillian Robertson.
You got Robertson, the Canadian. Matteos Gamra taking on Guram Kutateladze. There's a lot of people going with Guram Kutateladze. I'm going with Matteos Gamra, your former 2-division KSW champ.
Same here. I think he's going to be able to get it done. I want to see him fight Anthony Pettis after this.
That'd be awesome. We've got Thomas Almeida taking on Jonathan Martinez. I'm going Almeida. It's going to be a good fight.
I was with Martinez. Switched my pick. Going Thomas Almeida now.
Going with Almeida. Claudio Silva taking on James Krause, the James Krause. Or is it James, the James Krause? I don't know. I'm going with Hannibal Claudio Silva.
Same here. All day.
We got a lot of people saying Park is trash.
That's fine.
Is John Phillips a lot better than him? Next fight, you got Jimmy Crute taking on Modestas Bukauskas. Oh! I'm going with Jimmy Crute in this one.
Yeah, Jimmy Crute. Just a stylistic nightmare for Bukauskas.
And then in our next fight, our co-main event, this should be a really good fight. And it's a tough one because Katlyn Chookagian's so much taller and so much longer. I just think Andrade is going to be able to break the reach. But overall, it should be a good fight. I've got Andrade.
Yeah, I think the physicality and the power is going to be too much for Chookagian.
And then our next fight, our main event, it should be an awesome fight. You've got TKZ, the Korean Zombie, Chan Sung Jung, taking on a really tough out in T-City, Brian Ortega. It should be an awesome fight. I'm going to go with the Korean Zombie.
Oh, yeah, Korean Zombie, probably going to put on a boxing clinic. I have him by stoppage, too. That's how I'm so confident with this Korean Zombie pick.
It should be a really good fight. I appreciate everybody in the chat. Tossing us a like, tossing us a sub. We appreciate that, too. The UBC Park is absolute trash. Don't even try to take that
all.
Park
fans in here.
You're a dingus. I mean, do you know him personally? Did he slight you? What's your scoop here, pal? But overall, it should be a good card. And Matt, this is something, we got about 5 minutes. I want to say it. I mean, we look at this overall card, and we're always talking about letter grades for a card. What are you going with out there? Toss us something in the comments and let us know what you're thinking, because overall, to me, this is one of those cards that name value-wise, it might not be that great. It might fall under the radar a little bit. I know numbers-wise,
this is better name value than a lot of Fight Night cards have been getting.
Number-wise, this card's done all right compared to the last few that we've had. But, I mean, I'm looking forward to a lot of these fights. I mean, Striegel Nurmagomedov, you get the unknown of Striegel a little bit. You know what he's good at with the Sambo. The John Phillips, Jin Young Park fight, I think you could arguably have a finish there. The Gamra Kutateladze fight, I'm just so amped up personally for it. I mean, you can't miss it. So I'm seeing B plus from Chris Thompson. Who else? We got Josh Reimer with the B plus.
You guys are all going to not like this. This is A plus. Korean Zombies fighting Brian Ortega. This main event puts it over the edge no matter what, because this fight really could be for the title. And they were just at slightly different stages of their careers. And Brian Ortega, if he beat Max Holloway, who knows? We might have seen a Korean Zombie fight at one point. Korean Zombie might go out there, beat Alexander Volkanovski. Ortega chokes a couple people out. They rematch for the title. I'm very excited for this main event. I think it's going to be an absolute banger because neither guy gets into boring fights. So just one of those guaranteed barn burner matchups, and I can't be more excited.
And I saw a comment in there. There was a good comment. I got to go back up because things are moving quick. By Jeff Burner. Always a pleasure watching the picks. How'd y'all do last week? Good question. Not good. Not good. I went, what was it, 8-5, and you went 6-7. So you know what, Matt?
Get it back.
Breaking up the show. I get the Fight Night Picks Pick'em trophy, but I mean, over the year, it's been pretty good. You can check out the descriptions underneath, and you can figure out what our picks are. We update them week over week, so by percentage, 2 to the horn, they're actually not too bad. But I'm really looking forward to this card. I see B pluses, I see triple A's, I see
perfect.
All love. It should be a really good card. I'm looking forward to it. I'll go with a B, an A, something in there. It should be a lot of fun. Really appreciate everybody for tuning in. As always, week over week, this thing keeps on growing. We're looking at doing some crazier things as we move on with the week. Matt, thanks for hanging out.
No problem. Thank you, guys.
you for hanging out. Hopefully you enjoy the fights. Matt, as we always say with Fight Night Picks,
let's get into it.
Ladies and gentlemen, recorded in Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada, it's time for the Fight Night Picks podcast with your host, Craig